All right, so you sent over some really interesting research on AI and LLMs, specifically about their potential to generate novel research ideas. And there's a lot to unpack here. But this Stanford study really caught my eye. They basically had human researchers going head-to-head with LLMs in this idea-generating showdown.
Yeah, it is a pretty fascinating premise. I mean, we're kind of used to AI helping us out, analyzing data or automating tasks. But when you start thinking about AI coming up with the research questions themselves, that's a whole other ballgame.
Right.
Totally.
And what's really wild is that the study suggests that AI might actually be better at coming up with novel ideas. Like in this research face-off, the AI-generated ideas were actually judged as more novel than the ones the human experts came up with. So I'm really curious, how did they even set up a fair fight like that?
Well, they were really careful about it. They had over 100 NLP researchers participate in this study. And we're talking serious credentials here, PhD students, postdocs, published authors, the real deal. And these experts had two main tasks. First, they had to generate their own research ideas, and then they had to evaluate a whole pool of ideas. But the catch was they didn't know which ideas were from humans and which ones were from AI.
Oh, so it was like a blind taste test, but for research ideas.
Exactly.
That's actually really clever. But how do you make sure that the AI ideas don't sound, robotic?
That's where the style normalization comes in. So they actually took the AI-generated ideas and they tweaked the language a bit to make them sound more like they were written by a human. And get this, the reviewers could only correctly identify the source of the idea like half the time.
Wow. So they really leveled the playing field. So what happened when the scores came in? Did the AI actually live up to the hype?
It really did. I mean, the results are pretty impressive. Across multiple statistical tests, the AI-generated ideas consistently scored higher on novelty. And it wasn't just like a small difference. This was statistically significant.
That is pretty impressive. But did they dig into what kind of novelty they were seeing? Were the AI ideas just kind of wacky? Or was there something more substantial going on?
That's a great question. And yeah, the study does provide some insights there. So they use 3 different statistical tests to measure novelty, each one kind of looking at it from a slightly different angle. And remember, this isn't just about numbers. The reviewers themselves often commented on how unexpected and innovative the AI ideas were.
Oh, I'd love to hear some of those comments. Do you have any examples?
Yeah.
Just to kind of get a sense of what surprised them?
Yeah, sure. So one reviewer said, and I quote, "The idea of using an LLM-based iterative approach is novel," which kind of suggests that the AI wasn't just, throwing out random ideas. It was proposing new methods, new approaches to research.
Okay, so it wasn't just spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. It sounds like there was some real thought behind these ideas.
Right.
But before we go too far down that road, I know this study also mentioned some limitations to AI ideation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So while the AI really excelled at novelty, it did score a little lower on feasibility. Some of the ideas were a bit more out there, maybe not as grounded in reality as the human-generated ideas.
So it's like the AI is a great brainstorming partner, full of exciting ideas, but you might need a human to be like, okay, wait, which of these can we actually do?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And just to give you a concrete example, let's compare a human-generated idea from the study with an AI-generated one. So on the human side, we have an idea called modular calibration for long-form answers.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward. What's that all about?
Basically, it's about making AI systems more reliable when they're generating longer responses, like essays or code,
Right.
A valid research direction, but maybe not groundbreaking or anything.
Okay, so what did the AI come up with?
All right, so now contrast that with an AI-generated idea called semantic resonance uncertainty quantification.
Semantic resonance. Now that sounds a lot more interesting.
Right, and basically this idea is about using multiple reasoning paths and then analyzing how they kind of resonate with each other to measure how confident the AI is in its output. So it's a much more complex approach and arguably more innovative. And they're both trying to tackle the same problem of AI reliability.
Yeah, I can see why the reviewers were impressed. It does seem like the AI is really pushing the boundaries of how we think about these problems. But did the AI have any blind spots? I mean, it's great at generating novel ideas, but can it tell if an idea is actually good? Or is it just kind of throwing out a bunch of possibilities?
That's another really important point that they addressed in the study, and it seems like LLMs, at least in their current state, aren't very good at judging the quality of their own ideas. They can generate these novel concepts, but they don't necessarily know if those concepts are valuable or even feasible.
So even with AI generating these amazing research ideas, we still need human researchers to be the curators, the sense makers, to guide the process and make sure the ideas are both novel and impactful.
Exactly. It's not about replacing human researchers. It's about figuring out how they can work together, each one leveraging their own unique strengths.
It's such a fascinating dynamic, this whole interplay between human ingenuity and AI capabilities.
Absolutely. And the Stanford researchers are already looking ahead to the next steps. They're planning a follow-up study for EMNLP 2024, where they're going to be comparing AI-generated ideas not just to those from human researchers, but to actual research papers that got accepted to the conference.
Oh, that's smart. They're raising the bar, seeing how the AI stacks up against the best of the best in the field.
Exactly. And to make sure everything is transparent and to minimize bias, they've pre-registered their analysis plan and shared the AI-generated ideas ahead of time, which is a great way to let the research community scrutinize their methods and really contribute to this important discussion.
That's great. It's a really good example of how to approach this kind of research responsibly and openly. It seems like they're really committed to making sure that these findings actually have a real impact on the field. But speaking of impact, what do they think this all means for the future of research?
Well, they're cautiously optimistic. They definitely see AI playing a huge role in transforming research, but they're also realistic about the challenges. They bring up things like intellectual property rights, the risk of misuse, and the need to avoid that homogenization of ideas that we talked about earlier.
Right, because like with any powerful technology, there's always the potential for unintended consequences.
For sure. And that's one of the reasons why they're really advocating for transparent documentation practices. They suggest that researchers should clearly state how AI was used in the process of coming up with these ideas, including things like what models and data and frameworks were involved.
Right. It's like a nutritional label for your research, so we can see what went into it and assess the potential impact.
Exactly. And beyond transparency, they also emphasize the need for more research on AI safety, especially when it comes to this idea generation process. And they specifically mention RLHF, or reinforcement learning from human feedback, as a promising direction.
Yeah. RLHF, we've talked about that before, where you train AI systems to align with human values and preferences. That seems like it could be crucial for making sure that AI-generated ideas are not just novel, but also ethically sound.
Absolutely. We don't want to create a system that's really smart, but then ends up being harmful or misaligned with our goals as a society.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Pushing the limits of AI while also making sure that it's used responsibly and ethically.
For sure. And it's not just a conversation for researchers. Policymakers, ethicists, the public at large all need to be a part of it.
It's a big conversation.
Yeah.
But it's an important one. And I think this Stanford study is a really great starting point. It's brought up so many interesting questions and possibilities.
And speaking of questions, remember that one from the outro? The one about if AI can do this now, what does that mean for research 5, 10, 20 years down the line?
Oh, yeah. It's hard to even wrap your head around it, isn't it? But it's something we all need to be thinking about. Because this isn't just some abstract debate in academia. This is about the future of knowledge, the future of innovation, how we solve some of the biggest challenges humanity faces.
And it's a future that we all have a role in shaping.
I couldn't agree more. This isn't just about AI. It's about us, about how we choose to use this incredible technology to learn more about the world and about ourselves. And that brings us to you, our listener. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. What are your hopes for AI-driven research? What worries you? What questions are you grappling with?
This conversation needs to keep going, and we want you to be a part of it.
So reach out to us, share your thoughts, and let's explore this uncharted territory together.
One of the big things they highlighted was this thing called idea homogenization. And it turns out that LLMs, even with all their creative potential, can kind of get stuck in a rut. Like they'll keep generating similar ideas, even when you try to nudge them in different directions.
Oh, so it's like they have a couple of favorite songs that they just play over and over again. Even when you're like, come on, play something different.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of makes sense when you think about how these models are trained, right? They're fed massive amounts of data, and they learn to spot patterns, and then they try to replicate those patterns. So yeah, they can come up with like variations on a theme, but it's harder for them to really break out of the box, like to think completely outside the confines of their training data.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like if you only ever listen to one genre of music, your own songs are probably going to be pretty limited. Even if you're like a musical prodigy,
Yeah.
you need to listen to all different kinds of music to really expand your own creativity.
That's a really good analogy. And it just highlights how important it is to keep doing research on how to encourage diversity in AI-generated ideas. We can't just expect LLMs to be creative all on their own. We need to come up with ways to help them break out of these patterns and, explore uncharted territory.
So it's not just about building bigger and better LLMs. It's about finding ways to cultivate their creativity, make them more adaptable, more responsive to different prompts and constraints.
Exactly. And that goes back to that idea of human AI collaboration that we were talking about. We need human researchers who can be there to guide the AI, give feedback, help shape where it goes.
It's like a dance, isn't it? This back and forth between human ingenuity and AI capabilities.
Totally. And the Stanford researchers are already thinking about the next steps in this dance. So they're planning a follow-up study for EMNLP 2024, where they're not just going to compare AI-generated ideas to those from human researchers, but to actual research papers that were accepted at the conference.
Oh, wow. So they're upping the ante, seeing how the AI measures up against the best of the best in the field.
Exactly. And to keep things transparent and minimize bias, they've pre-registered their analysis plan. And they've also shared the AI-generated ideas ahead of time, which is a great way to let the research community look at their methods and be part of the conversation.
I love that. It's a great example of doing this kind of research in a way that's responsible and open. It really does sound like they're dedicated to making sure that these findings have a real impact. But speaking of impact, what do they think this means for the future of research?
Well, they're cautiously optimistic. They definitely see AI as this transformative force in research, but they're also very aware of the challenges, things like intellectual property rights, the risk of misuse. And we have to remember that homogenization of ideas thing we talked about before.
Right, because with any powerful technology, you always have to think about the potential downsides too.
Absolutely. And that's why they're really pushing for transparent documentation. They say researchers should clearly state how they used AI in the process of coming up with research ideas. What models did they use? What data? What frameworks?
Yeah, it's like a nutritional label for research. So you can see all the ingredients and assess the potential impact.
Exactly. And on top of transparency, they're also calling for more research into AI safety, especially when it comes to this whole idea generation thing. And they specifically mention RLHF, or reinforcement learning from human feedback, as a promising avenue.
RLHF, oh yeah, we've talked about that before, where you train AI to align with human values and preferences. It does seem like that could be super important for making sure AI-generated ideas are not just novel, but also ethical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't want to accidentally create a system that's really smart, but then ends up being harmful or completely misaligned with what we want as a society.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? Pushing the boundaries of AI while also making sure it's used responsibly and ethically.
It is. And it's a conversation that needs to include everyone, not just researchers. We're talking policymakers, ethicists, the public. Everyone needs to be involved.
It's a huge conversation, but it's so important. And this Stanford study feels like a really good starting point. It just raises so many interesting questions and possibilities.
And speaking of questions, remember that thought-provoking one from the outro? The one about what happens if AI can do all this now? What will research look like 5, 10, 20 years from now?
It's hard to even imagine what that future looks like.
Yeah.
But it is a question we all need to be thinking about, because this is about more than just some abstract academic debate. We're talking about the future of knowledge. The future of innovation. How are we going to solve the big problems facing humanity?
And as a future that we all get to help create.
That's so true. This isn't just about AI. It's about us and how we choose to use this incredible technology to learn more about the world around us and about ourselves. And that brings me to you, our listener. We really want to hear what you think about all of this. What are you hoping for with AI-driven research? What are your concerns? What questions are you struggling with?
This conversation needs to continue, and we want you to be a part of it.
So reach out to us. Tell us what you think, and let's explore this uncharted territory together. It feels like we're standing at the edge of something really big. This research is pointing towards a future where AI isn't just a tool, but an actual partner in the whole process of discovery.
Yeah, and that's exciting, but it means we really have to think carefully about how we evaluate and approach research in this new landscape.
Exactly. I mean, look at the Stanford study. They were so rigorous with their design, using multiple tests and controlling for bias. That kind of careful approach is going to be crucial moving forward. We can't just get swept up in the excitement and make all these claims about AI without solid evidence backing it up.
Exactly. We have to stay critical, always questioning our assumptions, and remembering those limitations we talked about, like idea homogenization.
Yeah.
AI isn't some magic solution to all our research problems.
It's a good reminder that we need to be the ones guiding AI's development, not just letting it run free.
Absolutely. We need to find ways to encourage diversity in the ideas AI generates, help these systems break free from their training data, and really explore new concepts.
It's almost like we need a whole new field of study AI for research,
Yeah.
where computer scientists and researchers from different fields and ethicists all work together.
I think you're right. We need people who can build these sophisticated AI models, researchers who can test them out in the real world, and ethicists to help us navigate the social and philosophical implications of all this new technology.
It's a big challenge, but it's also so exciting. We have this incredible opportunity to shape the future of research, to create a world where human ingenuity and AI work together to uncover new knowledge and solve some of humanity's biggest problems.
And it all starts with conversations like this one, with people who are informed and engaged and willing to explore these complex questions and share their perspectives.
So to our listener out there, keep digging into this topic. Read that Stanford paper. Keep an eye out for the follow-up studies they're planning. And most importantly, keep thinking critically about the role of AI in research. What are your hopes? What are your concerns? What questions are you still wrestling with?
This isn't just some academic debate. It's about the future of knowledge and innovation, and we all have a part to play.
We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts on our website, on social media, however you like to connect.
And until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking those tough questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That's all for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us.